Welcome to Ask Colleen, Spiritual Solutions for Life Situations. I'm Colleen St.Michaels, and I will be the host for this podcast. My aim is to provide you with the guidance and support through life's challenges, spiritual development, change, healing, and growth. Drawing from over 2 decades of experience as a spiritual practitioner, I will share my wisdom and offer answers to the questions that may weigh heavy on your heart and your mind. Remember that you are not alone, you are capable, and the light within you is unstoppable. Hello, and welcome back to Ask Colleen, Spiritual Solutions for Life Situations. I am Colleen St.Michaels, and I'm thrilled to have you back. And we have a treat this episode because I have a very dear friend who is joining me today, and her name is Kristen. And Kristen has been a client of mine. She started out as my client many years ago. And Kristen asked me the most amazing questions as a client. And there's probably no other person in the world that I would want to kind of lead this topic about mediumship questions. Because I realize that sometimes when I am sharing the podcast episode and like talking about it, I can't always go as in depth as I can as to when someone else asks me a question, and then I can kind of channel in a little bit better. But Kristen, I want to just say thank you so much for, agreeing to share your time and your space, your energy, and your great questions with me. And we previously talked, and I do not know what questions Kristen's going to ask, which are my favorite. But I want to hear about your new podcast, and it is called Clarity to Consciousness, which I'm like so in love with this title. We've talked for years about you, birthing this beautiful podcast. So I would love it for you to share with the listeners what inspired you to, take the leap, and who is this new podcast for?
Thank you so much, Colleen. And first, I just have to say that was such a sweet introduction. So thank you for those kind words. I'm so honored, and I'm so happy that you like my questions because they're always being asked because I want to learn what you do. I want to understand it and figure it out and try it on my own. So thank you for that. And I would say Clarity to Consciousness is a podcast that's intended to reach those who are just starting their spiritual journey and those who want to learn and grow with me, as I have found so much value in the individuals who are my guests in what they share. And I wanted to share it back with others as a way of giving back, because I've learned so much, I've grown so much as a person. And I felt that, it was a calling of mine to give back in some way. And this was what came to me as to how to do it. And it's really about, taking the first steps in spirituality, making it palatable for those who may just be starting out on the journey and may not necessarily know a lot about spirituality. And maybe they see some stereotypes out there, or they see some myths, and it kind of keeps them from wanting to learn more. But I've just learned so much through working with teachers like you. And I really just wanted to share it with others. So I'm hoping people will join me on the journey and learn and grow as I am as well.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, no, it's fabulous. And for anyone listening, the link will be at the bottom of the episode to how to connect with Kristen's podcast, because I think what you said is so important. It's like making spirituality palatable, right? So we're in this, there's so many different myths that surround, specifically even our topic today, which is going to be like, not even the myths around mediumship, but my own experience is that, I wasn't, running out of the gates 100% embracing it. I had a lot of fears. I had a lot of blockages based off of, what I was taught, like what my Catholic upbringing taught me, what other people's version of what is truly God's connection into our spirit and what we're capable of. So I think that like doorway that you're opening is opening this like really great like buffet for people to, either allow themselves to listen and be like, wow, that really sounds interesting. Or like, oh, wow, I really connect with that. Or, oh, you know what, this isn't for me, but you're doing it in such a graceful way that really allows people to sit in the comfort of their own homes and then decide like, yeah, I've been going through that. Like, oh my gosh, like, because most people, as you know, we all think we're crazy. In the beginning. Like we question our, like,
Yeah.
is this really happening? And it's like, God, it feels so good that it's happening. And if this is crazy, like, why does it feel right? And why does it feel like it's soul settling, and it's like that embrace for your soul. And so I love that you're sharing your purpose, and as you're building your own progress and your growth and your learning. So very cool.
Thank
So
you. Thank you for that.
awesome. So in today's episode, I'm just really going to turn it over to Kristen to ask questions. But like in every episode, we are going to start off with an intention for the Peace Warrior cards. And, just so all of us have a connection in the light that is helping us to flow into the next week and see what the cards share with us. So just going to ask the angels to surround us and support each and every one of us. And then what is the message that we need to know moving into the following week or this week? Well, this was a special one when I created this one, just because I actually thought I was a human engineer. You cannot fix people. We are not engineers of humanity. And this card was specifically special to me because I was unaware of my enabling or my, Bob the Builder fixer habits that I had. I just looked at it as like, I loved people, depths and loyalty. And so often when we're going through this transition, we really realize that like, wow, we're really kind of interfering with people's growth cycles when we're always trying to fix the things that they're going through, because as the angels called me, a journey jumper. And the reason they called me a journey jumper, because they said I would just pull onto everybody else's journey and try to help them or fix things for them. And then as soon as I stepped back into my own journey, what then happened is they went through a repeat of the same situation. So every time I thought I was assisting and helping them to, have more fluidity in their life, I was actually creating them to go back to the page on their life lesson and start it all over again. So the guidance is more so instead of just jumping in, and a lot of times empaths, we are the ones who kind of, tend to feel what someone else is going through, and we don't want them to feel that discomfort, so we shoulder it. And what the angels are asking us to do is to be supportive, but not in a way where we're telling people what we're going to do that they need. It's more so in allowing people to, every conversation with my kids starts off, do you need to vent? Are you looking for support? Or are you looking for me to offer like solutions? Or what is it? And it's amazing because as a former, I would say I'm in recovery of enabling because I was always just doing. What I realized is that a lot of the people that were asking for help never gave any attention to what they needed to feel supported. And so if someone, and it's not saying like you're not going to help, but you're going to ask yourself, like, am I capable to support the way they would like me to, or is that crossing my boundaries? So it's about an inner conversation with yourself that if you find yourself being a yes person to everything, that you ask yourself, do I want to do this? Does this feel good? Or am I saying yes because I don't want people to be upset with me? I don't want people to, we have these unconscious belief systems of like, people will be mad at us, or they'll be disappointed in us. And, we say yes to things that we necessarily don't want to say yes to. Someone's asking you to move, it's a beautiful day, and you're like, oh, sure, absolutely. And you're driving there pissed off because you really don't want to be there.
Yeah.
But And it's asking yourself, like, the energy that I'm giving to the situation, if I was in it, would they also reciprocate? And often you'll find out if you're an overgiver, they, the people you're overgiving to will tend not to do back
Mm-hmm.
at a level that feels satisfying. I don't know if you've ever experienced that
Yeah.
yourself,
Mm-hmm.
but it's,
Yeah.
I can say it's one of the harder lessons for empaths to learn is that, no means no, not in a negative way. It just means yes to you. And it's not
Mm-hmm.
a negative thing. It's just I'm not able to. It's having compassion for ourselves on a different level.
Right.
So
Yeah,
it's cool.
that makes sense. And I think I would like to think I'm an empath too. I believe that I am.
You
And
are.
yeah, it's because you disappoint somebody, you're gonna feel their disappointment, and it feels terrible, and you don't want to make
Yeah.
anybody feel bad, and you want to be a people pleaser. I think there's probably all things that empaths deal with are tied into that.
Personally, you and I've had this conversation about how it goes back to the inner perfectionist as well, right? It's just because that heightened critical
Mhm.
inner analysis, right? So it's like sometimes we feel like we're transparent and like everyone can see that insecurity, but in reality, the battle is within ourselves. And it's almost like that inner perfectionist doesn't want another critic,
Yeah.
especially one on the outside, right? So it's that deep shadow work of going in and saying, it's like, why, as we inner consult ourselves, it's like, why do I feel like I'm not enough? Where do I feel like I'm not enough? And, it's in those still moments where we just have compassion for ourselves, where we'll allow ourselves to heal and feel the answer come through. And that's where we transmute it back and like give that version of ourselves the love. Like I would never tolerate someone in my physical world to speak to me the way I used to speak to myself in my inner world.
Mm.
Like I
Oof.
just wouldn't tolerate
Yeah.
it, right? It would be
Hmm.
like, I need to go. I can
Powerful.
stop
Yeah.
following, right? And so when we look at, our inner being, our spirit, like we're the most important audience, right? So
Yes.
we're always listening. And it's not so much what we say externally, but it's that really, I always say the subconscious mind is the silent listener. It's always recording and it's always listening. And it is then repeating and, bringing it back to us through life lenses. So it's like, what are we recording for it to be held on to?
Hmm.
You know, I was, I was the inner bully. It's just, I'm glad we're good. Colleen and I are good now. you know?
Yeah.
I have my moments, but it's good. It's good to feel good in knowing that when the inner bully kicks in, that you're like, what? Pause. You
Pause.
know,
Hmm.
pause. You don't get this airtime.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
we can get cooking on the
Okay.
questions, Mama. So
All right. All
all
right.
right.
Well, thank you so much for having this access. This is amazing. I do have a lot of questions about mediumship, and I think for starters, it might be good to kind of start off with something a little bit more basic. And I guess my question would be, can anybody be a medium? Or is it
Mm.
just somebody with a specific skill set?
So that's a great question because a lot of people will ask that. So it's almost that we all have the capability to practice and connect. But it's like, can I be a dancer? Right? It's about what is the time and the commitment and the dedication that I'm going to put into it, right? So, yes, I can dance, but will I be at that professional level? Or so it's more so everybody has the muscle, everybody has the ability to communicate. What creates the separation between like hearing it just super clear is the static in between, and the static in between is either like the blockages or where we are in an emotional level, where we're
Hmm.
at in our physical world, as far as like if we're living in the midst of chaos, we're having very low vibrational thoughts all the time, we're just in a really, dark space within ourselves. there's going to be more static between that soul to soul conversation, because no soul would come here being alienated from its source, right? Because when loved ones cross over, people cross over, they're returning back to source. We are a constant stream at source. So it's not the physical person that we're connecting with on the other side. It's my soul having a conversation with the souls on the other side. And it's the ability to be able to kind of tune in that frequency to keep in a closer connection and a clearer connection. So it's a lot about our work. A lot of people will say that they have the impulses, like, like they'll catch different signs. Like I've had clients for years say like, I'll ever say like, do you ever feel like you catch someone in the corner of your eye, like the peripheral of your eye?
Mm-hmm.
And then like, I go to look, like nothing's there. Well, that is them seeing spirit, but they're seeing
Mm.
it in a kind of peripheral view of it or vision of it. And so we may not all be dialed in and tuned in at the level in which I worked my muscle to be, but we all are capable of it. And it just may not, it may not be in the capacity where they're sitting down and automatic writing to their child loved ones. But the biggest point in all of this is truly with that question is not having an attachment to what you think it should look like.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I blocked myself silly because I thought it was always going to be something, and the angels were like, back it up, like, get out of the way. Like, you keep trying to jam the frequency
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
with your expectations of what you think it should be. And I
Yeah.
was like, and it was the pressure we put on ourselves. Like if someone wants to do it professionally, it's, not gonna lie, it's you're sitting in front of someone who knows the person who's crossed over.
Right.
So if you really get in your head, you're like, snap, please come through clear,
Yes.
and so it's more so really removing yourself from it, that we are not in control of it. We are just the conduit of it. And it's our job to clean out the space energetically to allow the frequencies to come through. And so everybody can, but it's kind of like, what are you willing to do to tune into that muscle?
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
Mm.
So for somebody, okay, let's take a look at it from a different perspective. So for somebody who wants to speak to a medium or work with a medium,
Mhm.
what are some good qualities that somebody should look for in who they're speaking to make sure, because I know that there's a lot of people out there that are like, oh, there's just people who's trying to, trick you.
Right,
I
profit
think
off the pain.
yes, and isn't there? I think there's a new special out there about that medium back in the 90s. What was her name? Cleo? Was that like
Miss Cleo. There used to be like
yes,
an 800 number, like Miss Cleo,
yes.
call Miss Cleo. Yes.
Yes, I think that there's like a new documentary out about her. And so it's, there's so many skeptics out there. And I guess what would you tell somebody who wants to make sure that they're speaking to somebody of quality and not, getting duped?
Really good question. Um, this one's interesting because, for myself, my business grew word of mouth, right? So it was someone sat with a session and it was like someone told someone else. So, and then
Mhm.
someone told someone else. So it really was word of mouth. So that is a number one really good way to, navigate. Listen to your gut, really listen to your gut. If there's something within you that feels, there's normal nervousness, like, right? Like there's normal jitters. I can't tell you how many times, like, people think you read minds and you don't. Like, you're not a mind
Mhm.
reader.
Yeah,
It's like I shared before, like if I go out, I don't tell people I'm a medium.
right.
Because then
Okay.
everybody just shuts down. They're like, or they'll be like, is anybody here? Like, who's around me?
Uh,
And because if
yeah.
you sit in a saber connection, people just walk next to you differently, thinking like you know everything they ever did in their whole life. And that's it's really not, and it's
Yeah.
like, but I think that you have to, number one, if you're seeking to connect with a loved one that has crossed, I do tell people that they really should wait. until
Mm.
like 3 months to 6 months after someone crosses. I used to wait like 6 to 8 weeks to really get a strong enough connection for them to cross over. A lot of times people would be like, they want that immediate, are they okay right now?
Right.
And try to, so if I and everybody works differently, so I can't speak for the whole population of people who do mediumship work because everybody has their own signature in this field. But I think like with any career, there's with people who do accounting really well, and then there's the people who were not the greatest in integrity,
Yes.
right?
Hmm.
So integrity is super important, for myself. Like I look at, again, like such a sacred connection. So it's asking yourself, what are you looking for in going to a session? Right. So if you're going to seek the counsel of someone who's crossed over with a person, like myself or others medium, what what is your intention for going? Right. That's a big question because energy plays a huge role in who we align with and who we connect with.
Hmm.
So your intention is pure. Like if you're wondering, if they're mad at you, if you have unrest, then that will help you to align with someone who's going to not only deliver the messages but work with the healing aspect of it as well. That you don't, and I've said this numerous times, you don't want to go to someone who wants you to become dependent on them.
Right.
That's not, there's no integrity in that, right? Because
Hmm.
it's not to profit off of pain or keep somebody on the calendar. It's about delivering the messages and allowing the person who receives those messages to digest them at their own time, right? And not feel like you have a connection to what those messages come through. Because sometimes when clients would come in, messages would come through and it would not make any sense to them in that moment.
Yeah.
3 weeks later, I get an email, they're like, oh my gosh, I totally understand what they're talking about, right? So it's like they use that time to speak. So it's asking, number one, yourself what it is that you're, and if you're a skeptic, why are you going?
Right.
Like,
Hmm.
like that's just my question. Like if you're a skeptic, there's difference between skeptics and people who just are like taunting, right? I've been very fortunate during my career to not have, because the energy I'd set for myself was like, I'm not here to sell what I do to anyone. Like it's not my job to convince you that what I do is real, because it's
Hmm.
not my job to sell it to you, because I know I can do the work. So you can either sit and understand it that you're a book, and if your book is closed, then the reading is closed,
Right.
because it's your energy that creates the openness in the reading. And there's other things, but the majority of it, someone's skeptical. But if you have conversations with people, you'll find that the fear is what keeps them closed. It's not necessarily, it's grief that may keep them closed. It's a fear
Hmm.
of, they're doing something against God, right? So
Hmm.
having conversations can eliminate a lot of those blockages that you might find from someone. But if you're seeking one, I would go on referrals and
Yeah.
ask around, and know when you go to your session,
Hmm.
detach from everything but love, and you will have the best reading.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I
Right.
love, yes. Hmm. And I really liked what you said too. This makes so much sense to me. You could get duped or scammed by anybody in any profession. It's not
Correct.
just
Right.
mediums
Right.
or only
Right.
mediums or any of that, it could be
Right.
anybody, and that makes
Right.
it's a job that people have that they're doing and fulfilling. And
Right. It is different that, like I always say to people, like, it is a career, right?
yeah,
But there are boundaries. Like if you're going to a party, your accountants, if you're an accountant and you're showing up at a party, you're not just gonna be like doing taxes at the table for
right.
while everybody's having cocktails and like that's like, hey, take a look at my taxes. Right.
Yeah.
So anything goes when it's about the connections of things. Like if I'm at a social event, it's not the
Mhm.
place or the time to be
Yes.
opening up energetically to be then, you know,
True.
you know, whatever,
Mhm.
people may want you to do it, but for my own self, it's not a sacred energy for me to do it in. It's
Right.
I'm looking at what I'm walking in, so it's like I'm going into that office, not them.
Yes.
So it's my own boundary.
Yeah. Okay.
Mhm.
That makes sense. You call yourself an angel intuitive. And
Mhm.
um, I think it would be helpful to explain the difference in what you do in speaking with angels versus speaking with loved ones and how they
Mm.
intersect or they don't intersect and what the differences are.
Mm. Yeah, good questions. So the so our angels are, and I had done a series with angels, intuition, and then we're on the mediumship section of that,
Mhm.
like aim, and aiming to always reach our target. So angels, intuition, and medium. So we're all a bunch of teammates, right? So it's like I want you to just envision that our angels are at this level, right? Let's say we're going to look at our level system, and it's not like,
Yes.
oh, they're better or not better, right? So our angels are here, our loved ones are here, and we're here. So it's just opening up to the realms of support. And, a lot of healing can come through the mediumship realms that then help us personally with our vibration expansion, right? So for myself, I've shared before, like angels connecting with angels. Angels have never walked the earth, but our loved ones have. So there is a teacher or a mentor on the other side angelically that knows the purity of source soul and has never ever left that space, but is the closest thing to humanity to help the source in us shine outward. And then we have our loved ones who crossed over, who just came from the human experience and now have the full remembrance of being back home. So they want to help bring that source light out into our physical body with our breath still in us.
Yeah.
And so that's where this like beautiful network, I always call it like, do you see the Verizon commercial years ago where like, it's like my network's behind me, like you're covered in like the V of all the people.
Yes.
And
Yes. Yes. I love
so,
that.
so each of us has our own like divine network that's hanging
Mm.
out.
Uh-huh.
And, but it's more so understanding about the other side that they can't do it for us. They're not here to, you know, interfere in our soul's path or lessons. They're coming through to help us have more fluidity and flow, and then to help us to understand, okay, why is this such an obstacle for me? Like, why, none of us were taught how to grieve. We were taught how to build relationships with loved ones. We were taught how to build bonds with people. We were never taught how to live without them.
Mm.
So school happens hard when someone crosses, and it's like, how do I redefine a new normal? Like, how do I accept going into a new different? Because we've been told for so long without being told how to grieve. We've been told to, you know, don't have joy. Don't go to the restaurants you used to go to. Don't do, like, we're always taught to like kind of dim our light because our loved one's not here. When in actuality, our loved one's on the other side, and they're like, throw your light up,
Yes.
like, throw the light on, like, go laugh again, like, and do life, because this is just a hiccup of time that we're here before that we reunite.
What you said was so good. We're never taught how to live without them. That's so true. And
Yeah.
they should have a course on that, like how to live without your loved ones, because people struggle so much with it, and
Well,
it's so hard
it's
sometimes.
interesting because one of the main messages from the other side that I gained as, being a student and a messenger was that most of us don't know how to live life either, right? So
Mm.
life is meant to be lived, not saved. But most of us put ourselves in these boxes consistently trying to save our life, right? Meaning, I don't want to be embarrassed. I don't want to fail. I don't want to do this. I don't like, we're not actually living, right? So when someone actually crosses, it's like, we are taking that idea that someone else made us capable of living rather than stepping into our own self and saying, like, I choose to live. Like, I choose to, like, be a little bolder. That's why I always change all my acronyms, right? LEAP is live every available possibility, right? Fail first attempts in learning. Fear,
Mm.
everything. Like, I had to change things that paralyzed me. It's all these stupid 4-letter words that were always taking me down at the knees, letting fail. You know, it's like, the heck, like, leap. Why is that killing me? You know, and it's like, so
Yeah.
I shifted the meaning. And I'm told that subtle, recorder in my head, that subconscious, that fail is just first times learning for me. So it's easier for me to try, because it was paralyzing. It's like, who are we afraid of? Who are the people everyone's afraid of? Like, it's like, oh, I don't want to get people to come at me, or like, who are the people? And it's like, people, it's typically the people in our own head.
Oh, like when you do it like that, it does feel really silly.
Right. I
Yeah.
know, because I mean, I was a contestant in the fear game, and I'll tell you, like, when the agents were like, who exactly are the people? Like, and I was like, like the critics, like the
Yeah.
people, and they're like, well, give them a face, and I'm like, oh, I don't really have a face. They were mob scenes, but they weren't faces,
Right.
and they're
Right.
like, well, they're like, sit with yourself a little bit, because that mob scene is inside of you. You are, raising your pitchforks, and you're taking yourself down,
Mm-hmm.
and you're robbing everyone else of your wisdom because you can't get out of your own fear. And I was like, facts. Like, it was facts.
Hashtag fact.
Hashtag facts. Like, how you argue with angels.
That's so
But
funny.
yeah. And
Mm-hmm.
so, and that part of it was really, I learned how to live by working in the afterlife,
Mm.
truthfully, because, after thousands and thousands and thousands of sessions, not one person ever said, I really wish I would have went out there and worried more. Like, no one ever said it. Like,
Yeah.
no one ever said, I really wish I would sacrificed more. Being Irish Catholic, sacrifice was like, that was an honor in our house. I sacrificed. And we're like, what did you do to sacrifice? Like, it was a term of endearment, right?
Yeah.
And in learning on the other side that there's like no medals for martyrs on the other side, I was like, what? I thought I was supposed to do what I needed to do here to get further over there. And they were like, that's a
Nope.
human game. Yeah.
Learn that
So,
now. Learn that now. Don't get on the other
right,
side being a martyr and give
yeah,
up on
right,
everything in life. And oh,
yeah.
wow.
And it was a martyr. It was like, fine, I'll do it. Like, oh, you go. Like, I'll do it.
Yeah.
And a lot of it was fear in the martyring, but I thought but it was just funny when I learned that. I was like, wait a minute, you're telling me I'm gonna know? Like, what? The
Who's doing it
sacrifice,
to
right?
get into heaven?
Exactly, right. But the sacrifice truly is the sacrifice of the human experience,
Yep.
right? So when we
Uh-huh.
cross over, we're like, oh, we just totally bypassed tons of lessons and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that was interesting.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Here's a kind of a juicy one. Are you ready?
Go ahead.
All right. So my question is have you ever felt scared or in danger from evil entities or anything bad in any of the situations you've been in your mediumship practices?
I have felt darkness, yes. However,
Mm.
I never felt it for myself. Meaning, so there is not a morning that I don't wake up and I'm shielded and protected, right? So, especially when you're doing spiritual work, whether it's on yourself, whether it's for someone else, your spiritual hygiene is your toothbrushing. It is, going potty in the morning. Like, it is a necessity, because your job is to be observant, not absorbent, right? So, and lower vibrational entities are very attracted to light. So here you are, this very light being. It's like a moth finding the light, right? It's not a personal attachment. It's just basically like, oh, they're brighter than this, right? So, and so when you're working, right, and I've worked with people from all facets of life and all thought processes of life. Some who were like, why am I here? Like, literally. And it's not about, it's about our personal vibration a lot of times, that we can attach, entities can attach, or lower vibrational feelings can attach. But the thing that people have to understand is that wisdom comes from understanding that light is information, darkness is lack of information. It is not to put fear into people.
Yeah.
It is not to put this power into it. It's about having the wisdom that if we have light forces, we also have dark forces, right? But the fear that seems to get more attention is the fear of something dark, right? There's so much dark scattered in the world we're seeing today. We walk into it all the time. But it's not about labeling people. Like a lot of times people will meet someone and like their energy's dark. They just may be having a bad day. So their energy was just not good. It doesn't make them like dark energy, but there are dark energy. And yeah, I have worked with people to help them clear those lower vibrational energies. It's not me personally. It's a process of surrounding myself as always. Some symptoms that I would feel if I could feel that there was like a lower vibrational entity or energy would be, I get like a headache, or and it's not always necessarily dark. It could be if a soul didn't fully cross. They might have been newer and, hadn't fully crossed yet and were kind of holding themselves in that holding pattern because they were afraid of judgment. And it's about just really surrounding yourself in the light. It's about understanding you should not touch souls. You don't need to touch spirits that have crossed, like in dreams. Like sometimes people say like they can see a loved one and that loved one is saying like, I need you to help me. I need you to help me. Like you don't, right? You can love them, send them love, but you don't need to, because a lot of times fear can process nightmares and experiences that don't feel good. But then there's also lower vibrational forces who prey on fear.
Right.
That's why it's very important about your own personal vibration when you're doing connection, because there are false lights out there. So if we're looking at the angels, in a sense, being here and our loved ones here, well, there's this like grid line that where they'll hang out like unsightlies. What do they call them? Tricksters, like
Tricksters.
spirits and
Yeah.
stuff. They're just lower vibrational spirits. That's what they are. They're tricksters, or false lights, which will then speak. And you can pretty much tell if, in a sense, you may be connecting with a false light because basically they're very cunning. Will basically like tell you what you want to hear. They may suggest things that are not in the light, like, oh, you deserve it, you should take that, or you should do this. I worked with a woman years ago who had a life lesson where she was in her vulnerability, thought she was connecting in, but really she was connecting with a false light. And as soon as she came in, I'm like, stop the communication. Like I could feel it.
Wow.
I'm like, you're not talking to the light, you're talking to a false light, and they're telling you things that are just not okay. They are not, and so in that aspect, my first internal conversation, that's where I came to Michael, swoop it up, get it out, like clear it out, clear it or get it out. Clear my space, and all of this is going on internally, like
Right.
as so like I'm feeling it. I'm like, you're not talking to the light, you're actually talking to what we call a false light. Well, the thing where they become tricksters is because, they're aware of that realm.
Yeah.
Like, they're very aware of that realm. So they can mimic it very well. But there is a feeling in which you get, like, so it's important to always check in with yourself. The spirit in the light is never going to make you feel sick. It's never going to make you feel like you have a headache. It's never going to make you feel vibrationally off. Or dizzy. Spirits in the light are very gentle. They're very loving. And lower vibrational spirits are very, they do what they say. They're going to trick with your life. They can, and they prey on pain a lot of times and vulnerability. And it's a lesson in understanding that we are a polarized world. Whether it's light, it's balance, right? We have the yin and the yang. We have, the day and the night. We have these balances of light and dark. And it's about asking ourselves, can I speak with the light? And that's why we shield. We shield because it's like hitting an elevator button and going into the light.
Mm-hmm.
Be observant and not absorbent. And I don't like antique stores.
Right.
I don't really I won't typically stay at, this is just my preference. It's not necessarily, I have plenty of friends who do spiritual work who are super love historical places, buildings, and events. I'm not a huge fan of the stories of going into places where oh, this specifically happened. I'm like, why are people staying there? These penitentiaries they have at Halloween. What
Mm-hmm.
in the hell? No. I'm like walking into one of those places. My son went to one and he had more selenite stuffed in his pockets. And he's like, what are you doing? Other than a vampire steep I'm sending him in with, I was like, you're becoming a young man. I don't have that control right this second. I'm like, however, you're not going in there unarmed.
Mm-hmm.
Because think about it, it's this penitentiary. It's energy stays in places, and that's not necessarily a high vibrational space, right?
Yeah.
And not into it at
Yeah.
all.
Well, that was actually another question that I had was things like horror movies or things like the penitentiary. I've actually heard that the asylum, Penhurst
Ugh.
Asylum, I think that one I've heard is particularly bad. I don't know if you've heard or
Yeah.
know of anything
Mhm.
with any of those.
No.
Yeah.
I know people love them. My daughter, she can watch horror movies and this, and she
Oh,
loves them all.
she
And I
can.
cannot
Mm.
howl at them. I can't howl at them at all. I have trouble with anything that has a lot of violence.
Yeah.
I have trouble, even if, people love medical shows where they're showing cuts and stitches. I seriously feel like it's happening to me. So, I can't separate myself, scary movies, I can't separate myself
Yeah.
from it. And I just feel like it shifts your vibration. But I don't want to do anything to alter my vibration, to be an invitation of things. I do
Mm-hmm.
not like Ouija boards at all. At all. Ouija boards,
Mm-hmm.
my kids, they will laugh to this day. My daughter's 24, my son's 17, and they're like, yeah, mom, well, we would be going out, and she'd be like, I swear to you, if there's a Ouija board, you get the heck out of there.
Yeah.
My Gianna's up, not the up, all about this. If there's a Ouija board, you get out of there.
Right.
God,
That's so funny.
I know, right? And Gianna's
Yeah.
and I was like,
Uh-huh.
it's dangerous. It's dangerous.
Yeah.
It's not the board. It's the irresponsibility that people take when they have the board, right? They're just opening up everything, being oh, spirits, oh, there's
Mhm.
no protection. And guess what? That closest rim is what's listening.
Right. Yeah,
And
they're just looking for an invitation, right?
yeah, I had years ago a young girl who totally was tuned in, really, really sensitive, so tuned in. And she went against her gut, and her sorority sisters were doing Ouija boards, and she stayed. And
Mm.
when I tell you, she had a hell of a time getting her energy cleansed after that. She was having intense nightmares.
Oof.
She was having suicidal thought. I mean, it was this entity that attached to her was really pretty intense. And because she was an incredibly bright light. And again, it's
Wow.
not about fear, it's about education and wisdom. You're not just going to walk into, neighborhoods that you're unfamiliar with and just flash your diamonds, your golds, your money, and anything else. You're going to use a little bit of precaution and being protection, having protective, measures set up. Or energy is our greatest wealth. So let's not walk around with it, just hanging out.
Yeah.
So people can sleep in it, attach to it, or, trample on it. It's just this is your greatest wealth, is your energy.
When you
Because you build everything off of that account.
Right. And you mentioned a couple times they're attracted to your bright light. Can you talk a little bit about what you mean by that when you say somebody's a bright light?
So, do you ever just meet someone and they light up the room? It's
Mhm.
they're
Yeah.
very, it's people who are, animals are attracted to them. They have this
Yeah.
grace around children. They're very easeful. They're very caring. They just have a grace to them, right? And they're just, you can almost feel the goodness of their soul with them. It's not even that they're doing anything. It's just that presence is just, it just feels like it's It's
Yeah,
quenchy, like
they're
quenches your thirst. It's
pure.
a,
Yeah.
it's a sweetness, it's a pureness. And
Mm-hmm.
so when, I always said that the dark knows who the light is before the light remembers who they are. A lot of
Mm,
times when people are first waking up, they might go through some traumatic events, especially light workers. Light workers have a little bit difficult path at times when, if you look at the life that or an experiences they lived leading up to their awakening, it it may not just be all roses. They may have gone through abuse, difficult relationships, substance abuse, family traumas. Like they don't usually have the easiest of walk, but it's how they transmute their pain and their trauma into bringing that up into their earth school experience and then helping others through it, right? And it's like to wonder why like some people have it like easy peasy and other people seem like they're just walking through quicksand everywhere they turn. Their life paths may be a little bit heavier because they are a light worker, and that's not, creating like a little ebook now. It's like, as a light worker, it's like we have to walk through the dark to find our light, and how that light worker's way is not always the easiest path, but it is the most rewarding. And it's because our soul came here to be a change, right? So we had to go through the studies of Earth School and go through the experiences because, if you just feel like, oh, I had a charmed life, I've never had a stressful relationship, I've never, it's not that you can't help someone from that source space, but there is a power in growing through the experiences and actually being like, okay, here's how you do it. Like,
mm,
here's how you heal, because like our light becomes a spark to your light, and then your light becomes a spark to someone else's light, right? And that's how we strengthen one another, by not living in the pain of what happened to us, but really sharing the victory of how we transmuted that pain and what were the steps we took to move through that trauma, to take control of our own destiny and not allow those events to create our path forward.
yeah. Okay. Wow. All right. So for people who want to learn how to be a medium for themselves,
Mhm.
what would you recommend? Do you actually teach courses on it? Because I will say, working with you, I've had so many powerful experiences, and
Thank you.
working with you, I've taken courses with you, or
Mhm.
been on Zoom meetings where you teach us how to
Mhm.
do our own mediumship, and I feel like I've really had more success working with you than I've ever had, at least on my own. So I think it really helps to have somebody, especially somebody like you, who I
Yeah.
really feel, when we talk, I really feel like you share things that are really powerful and so insightful in my life. Like, I'm like, oh my God, I just said that the other
Uh,
week. Like, I find
yeah.
myself, it's like, oh my gosh, she knows things. It's like
Yeah.
insane sometimes. So anyway, so I guess my question ultimately is what would you recommend for somebody who wants to learn mediumship, and do you teach it yourself?
I do. But I also love, so it's about understanding like the process of it, right? So
Hmm.
when I would do mediumship work, but every person I sat with actually was a double session because it was with angels and it was with loved ones,
Ah,
right? And because that was our healing team. So, I looked at mediumship as, it's not just giving someone the messages, it's giving someone the tools on how, because who doesn't want to heal, right? There are people who are like,
right.
I'll never heal. Like, that's your statement, fine, however, just take this away with you, right? Like, I always felt very frustrated because people would say, well, just go do it, oh, you just have to do this, and I'm like, just tell me what to do. Give
Hmm.
me a starting point of how to do it and I'll do it.
Yeah.
Like, give me something to work with, because I can wrestle with my own self all day long. I don't need someone else to tell me to wrestle with myself. And so the work that I do and how I do it is basically creating that connection with your tea and the light, because that's how your unconditional love. Like, it's not just the mediumship, it's knowing that your intuition works like this, right?
Hmm.
It's creating this harmonized, partnership with your inner microphone, which is your intuition. Once you understand your intuition, then it's like, oh, our angels speak through that. Oh, our loved ones speak through that. Like, and you may find like my bond with angels was much stronger than anything, right? That spoke intuitively, like so palpable to me, more so than my own intuition. So like when the angels, I would ask questions to angels, I felt like I got the answers super clear. When I would try to build my own intuition at times, I felt like I interceded too many times to question it, right? So just that's how I went. So my idea of teaching is understanding, number one, what is my student's background? So if someone is really great with intuition, then we can move right into that mediumship muscle and then harness. And, you know, because when I'm teaching one, it's like I can customize their blueprint. I can see exactly where their blockages are. I can see exactly where what's holding them back. I can actually see, like, because it's so cool because I use the angels as my teacher. Right. So when we're teaching someone mediumship, it's like, I'm like, where are they being blocked? And then they'll almost show me what their client is seeing, like what the person is seeing that I'm working with through their eyes. I'm like, okay. So they feel fear here. So we need to help release that. It's really cool. It's this beautiful puzzle. It's definitely a blueprint because everybody is at a different space. But it all comes down to, why don't we trust ourselves? Like the question I'm going to leave you all today with, not even just this question, is when did you stop trusting yourself? You know, because that's the key to all of it. It's about trusting ourselves, even just a little more than we did yesterday, and believing this inner voice within us that is trying to help us. Right. So it's like, when did you stop trusting yourself, right? Like to not believe yourself. Like, why did we surrender all of it over to these negative thoughts about ourselves? Like when did that happen? And when you can actually kind of visualize that time period, like I say that to Kristen, like, can you say like a point that was very specific that you're like, you know what? I said this and maybe someone made fun of me, or I was shut down from a parent, or I got in trouble with school, or those events are the beginning of our emotional closets that start our shadow work, which then takes us away from source of trusting ourselves.
Yeah.
And brings us out of it. And so that question is powerful because when you ask yourself, when did I stop trusting myself? Then you can actually go in and have a conversation with yourself at that age and heal it. Tell that little boy or little girl inside, like, you know what, you weren't wrong and it was okay. And that's our inner child that we need to tend to, because that child has been standing up in our adult life and opportunities in which we want to move forward, but that child's like, no, don't do it, it's not safe. Rarely cut us, right? So when we kind of identify that, that opens up a lot of the airways for us to trust ourselves intuitively, trust that when loved ones come through, that's their messaging, trusting ourselves that when the angels speak through to us, that is who they are. But it's asking yourself, you can want it, but if you don't trust yourself, it just makes it harder.
Yeah.
On yourself, right? And it's like, it's looking at yourself, how you trust yourself, right? Because like I could say, I trust myself driving, right? You trust yourself at work, you trust yourself. But when it comes down to the big thing, like, when did you stop trusting yourself?
Okay.
So, I mean, to me, it was like, like I know exactly the beginning of the breakup with myself.
For me, it doesn't come up. I can't think of a one point in time in particular. Nothing's.
In meditation, just sit there and kind of think a time frame or a period or a situation or a conversation, where it can even be something. As an empath, we often are guilty by association. Something can be happening around us and we're absorbing it like it's happening to us.
Right.
Yeah. So it's like all these little nuances of the little things that create the big things that create our separation from our source self.
Yeah.
So I love it.
Yeah. Me too. I mean, gosh, I have so many questions. So, I could go on all night. I do. And I want to make sure, you know, I ask the types of things that other people would be interested in too. And I could, like I said, I could go on forever. So if,
Yeah.
please feel
No,
free to
no, these
stop
are
me.
great
But
though.
I'm
I
curious
love it.
what like first. Okay. So I'm speaking as somebody who has I don't consider myself particularly gifted in this area, although I am learning and getting better. But you wonder, like, what's it like for you? Is it like the boy in the
Mm.
Sixth Sense who's seeing the dead people? Like, what's it like for a medium? Like, do you actually see with your eyes? Do you see with your mind? Is it like imagination? What's it like? And how do you know? I guess.
Yeah. That's a great, because that was one of my misconceptions. Like,
Yeah.
because I can only speak for myself because I only see through my eyes, but I have friends who are also in the world of mediumship. And, for me, I'm a feeler, so I feel everything. And then so it's like I can feel the different energies. Like the angelic energy has one vibration, our love on energy has another vibration. And it's subtle, and it just can be like a slow temperature change. It could be in a shift in vibration. It's very subtle. When loved ones come through, I always say I avoided puzzles my whole life. Like I always hated puzzles. Like people are like, "Oh, you want to do a puzzle?" I'm like, "That sounds like torture." Like nothing sounds fun. Like that sounds fun at all. However, I'm living in this divine puzzle on the other side. I used to like the word search games, like where Waldo, like, find Waldo amongst all the people, and you circle like the banana and the stuff. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like on that,
Mm,
I don't know what
yeah.
they're called. They're like
Yeah. We're
fun something.
Oh, I remember the
Scholastic used to
highlight.
have them. Yeah,
The
highlights. That's
highlight.
it. Yeah.
Yes.
And it was like, that's basically what my mediumship world is like. I can hunt for the little things amongst everything else that's going on. So for myself, when I say I see, it's not necessarily that I'm seeing them in their full form. I may see a photograph. I may see a specific body part. I may see a hat or a ring or a bracelet. I may see very specific things that come up as imagery in my thoughts and in my
Okay.
mind's eye. When I am working with people, like if it's a group, I may see like, remember years ago, what was that game show that had all the Hollywood squares, right?
Huh?
So it would be almost like a Hollywood squares, and it'd be all these different movies playing in every single scene, right? Of that, right? Again, I have said to you personally, I have ADD, so for me it was my angelic divine direction, because all of that going on was super easy to focus on and still give the messages.
Yeah.
It was, it was my divine gift. I looked at it because I could do multiple things at one time.
Mhm.
But what happens is that we need to understand that then they may show pictures or words or different things. What they're trying to do is to get us in the frequency of their channel to make that connection. So if, often we forget to ask, we wonder, like, oh gosh, I wonder what that is. We usually ask, what is it? Show me more. I missed it. Can you say it again? Can you say it a different way? This is about us building that communication with that. They want to build a communication. So they're going to work on their end to fine tune it as they can. Seeing is not my first strength. I see a lot of images. I'm not seeing them standing, like, boom, standing there. Like, I don't walk into a room and see like hundreds of ghosts behind people. I
Okay.
walk into a
Okay.
room, I feel the energy of people,
Mhm.
right? I have friends who actually are seers. So they can
Hmm.
close their eyes and they see the experience that I'm feeling. Right. So
Oh.
I used to do readings with a dear friend of mine, Joni, and we could be talking to the same person on the other side and get two completely different readings. Not a negative thing, but she translates messages through her visions and all this other stuff, whereas I was the feeler and I received them through claircognizance, which was like clear knowing. It's the
Wow.
coolest thing ever. Because we used to say it was like this like book of reading, and then it would always intersect, her messaging the my messages, and then it would intersect into the full message. It was always super cool. Um, the thing that has to be most understood when it comes to clairvoyance is that it's not always what you think it's going to be, right? So when people have loved ones that cross
Mm.
over, they think that they're going to see them in the physical form. And if they do, usually it's in the very early mornings
Mm.
because that's when they're, the most unconscious.
Mhm.
Their brain is not awakened and their spirit is wide awake.
Yeah.
They also will go through the experience of when they first fall asleep. They may notice that they feel something on the bed or they feel something on their cheek. But when they try to force it, it will never last. Like if you're staring at something, you're never going to see it the way you
Yeah.
want to. But they show us imagery through our mind's eye. So when you're thinking about someone who's crossed over, it's because they're with you. We're showing it through your inner projector,
Mm.
projecting that self into your mind's eye. And that's another one thing that most people miss because they think they're just thinking about a person. But that's
Oh,
actually the visitation and the connection.
how cool. That's exciting to know.
Mm-hmm. It's very cool. But I'm going to close this session for now, and we can do this again if that's okay by you.
I would love an opportunity to ask
Yeah,
more. I could ask forever.
yeah. No, I love the questions. I just it's it's amazing because like literally time just like looks by when you're in
Yeah.
these spiritual conversations. Like you
Yes.
just don't even, it's like totally time is just a human construct anyway, but it really, really plays out when you're having these spiritual conversations. But I just want to thank you again. And again, tell people where they can listen to your podcast and I'm going to have the link again, but where, if they're on their own, where are you playing it at? And
Oh,
that's
thank
Clarity to
you.
Consciousness. Mhm.
Yes, Clarity to Consciousness. So you can find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, also on YouTube. And then you can find me. I have a Substack account, which is essentially a website that's supported through an organization called Substack. But yes, you can find it all there. But probably the easiest is either YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts.
Awesome.
Yeah. And
And you're on
also,
Instagram as well?
yes, and Instagram too. I have an Instagram account, so you can find me there and find all the guests that I have on. And we're having some really cool, interesting episodes coming up. Of course, you can hear Colleen's episode on intuition. She talked a lot about intuition. We broke it up into 2 episodes because it was so fascinating. And
That's good.
a lot of other interesting topics as well, such as hypnosis, for example. I have a new one coming out on neuro-linguistic programming, which should be a very interesting
NLP is
one too.
awesome. Very
NLP is
cool.
great.
And
So,
hypnosis is really great because it really helps you because a lot of people have a lot of myths around that.
yeah.
And so, real quick, funny story. So, I actually started my business. It was definitely my family that I was quitting my full-time job to be a hypnotist. And because, so like, I was really, and like, how do I tell my family, like, okay, I'm a single mom, I'm going to be quitting my job. And I'm opening a spiritual business and no one knows I even do anything with angels. Like I was so in the spiritual cloud that I mean, it was funny. And I was like, okay, well, the way I can like not look as cuckoo is that I'm going to go to hypnotherapy school. So I went to hypnotherapy school and I loved it. It was really phenomenal. But it was basically just like a little fib that I was like, oh, I'm going to be a hypnotist. I wasn't lying. I had to go get the certificate because I couldn't lie to my mother and father and everybody else. I was an adult by this mind you.
Yes.
But it was still that idea of like, yeah, how do I, you know, how do I out of life?
That's so funny.
Yeah. So I actually started Angel Wisdom as a hypno counseling. Like that's actually like the LLC was hypno counseling because I was afraid to actually say what I did. And that was like my covert that's my disguise. My pen name, I guess.
I think that's a great, first step.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it was awesome. So definitely tune into those episodes where she talks about the hypnotist and NLP is super fascinating. Like it is really just a fascinating technique for really moving through these blockages and just like, what do we believe? So
Yeah.
definitely tune in for future episodes of Kristen. I can't thank you enough for all awesome questions.
Yeah.
And to listeners out there, if there's questions that you may have that you want to ask Colleen, feel free to file out the form or find the form on my website called Ask Colleen and send in your questions. So have a wonderful week and thank you. Thank you for tuning in and joining Colleen St.Michaels on this transformation journey. If you have any questions, insights, or topics that you'd like to engage or ask, please visit www.colleenstmichaels.com under the podcast page of Ask Colleen to submit your question. I look forward to connecting with you next time. Have a beautiful day.